Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 263 of Humanity Rising. One of the wonderful parts of an ongoing program like Humanity Rising started last May is that as world events have unfolded, we've had the opportunity to cover live, essentially, what's been happening. When the city of Amsterdam announced that they were going to embrace donut economics, we brought Kate Rayworth on and had a number of sessions on regenerative economics and donut economics. When George Floyd was killed, we pivoted and delved into the issue of Black Lives Matter and what it means to be a country, a society gripped by the toxicity of race and separation. In the fall, when the pandemic was getting worse and worse, we began to delve into the issues of public health, particularly mental and psycho-emotional health. January, when the insurrection happened on January 6th, we began to just delve into the constitutional crisis of the United States and covered the inauguration of Joe Biden. And this week, in anticipation for a major report from the Pentagon to the US Senate on June 25th, we dove into the issue of the UFOs, unidentified flying objects. And there had been leaked reports that the Department of Defense finally was going to admit the most obvious thing in the world, and that is that extraterrestrial intelligence exists, has been present on planet Earth, and these ETs have encountered human beings with intelligible communication. But then last night it was leaked that what they know to be true isn't what they're going to put into the report. And what we're going to hear on June 25th in the public document is that the identified flying objects are not UFOs. They don't know what they are. They can't explain what they are, so they're calling them unexplained visual events. So we've gotten close to the obvious, but not quite yet. So we'll keep everybody posted, and we'll have Daniel Sheehan back probably fairly soon to keep us updated on this extraordinary phenomenon. As we begin our session today, let us begin as we always do. Just sit back and take a few deep breaths, center yourself in your body, close your eyes, and listen to your heartbeat. See if you can attune to your heart for just a minute in a spirit of gratitude and deep thanksgiving that you're alive. We're all alive at this extraordinary moment in the human journey. Thank you, everyone. And now, with an open heart and a heart full of gratitude and love for each and every one of you who are joining our session today, I'd like to frame our program by saying that the meta-thematic for Humanity Rising is how we use the crisis of the pandemic as an opportunity to re-examine ourselves, reimagine ourselves, and recalibrate what it means to be human in relationship to the larger ecology of life. One of our considerations is how women need to take enhanced leadership. And we've also been contemplating how men need to reimagine what masculinity means as we move beyond a patriarchal civilization. We've been very honored and privileged to partner with Riane Goodman, who you all know from previous sessions, someone who's been very active in the men's movement for many, many years. Previously has convened major global men's summits and is now working with Humanity Rising to take his work to the next level. We're focusing on a global men's summit in November 19 to 21, that Riane and a coalition of groups are coming together to convene all around looking at masculinity and how men need to take as much advantage as women to completely revolutionize the basic categories of identity, gender, sexuality, and purpose as we go through the tumult of gender fluidity and reinvention. So Riane, I want to welcome you to Humanity Rising, and I turn the program over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Jim. It's really a privilege to be here and to bring these panels together. And so welcome to you all. Thanks for being here. Thanks for spending your time, your morning or afternoon or evening with us. This is a really juicy topic, and I'm privileged to be able to bring men together that I know and that I've met and that I've read about to discuss these important issues about masculinity and manhood. In our first panel, we discussed the new man of wisdom and heart, which was a description of how men can act virtuously within their family and their work and their society to meet our current challenges. And in the second panel last month, we discussed the impacts of systemic racism on growing up Black. 4 beautiful Black men discussed their experience of becoming successful in spite of the challenges of Black male stereotyping. And in all of our panel discussions, we're examining the patterns of hierarchy and patriarchy and the domination model that's been the feature of Western societies for thousands of years. And the patriarchy we're talking about is not men over women or masculine over feminine, but some men at the top ruling over and controlling the lives of most men and women. Riane Eisler has described this as the domination culture. A culture that values material and matter over people and relationships. And both men and women have been subjugated and used by those at the top of a power and resource hierarchy. And so we're trying to help create a new vision of men and masculinity. Eisler calls it partnership culture. And we're highlighting the many initiatives that are transforming the vision of what a man is and who he can be and the roles he can play in order to be healthy and whole and a contributor to a better world for all people and all creatures. Western societies have reinforced individualism and competition between men, and we're focused on ways to reverse that trend and bring men together through cooperation and collaboration and mutual support. And the men's movement has been doing this for decades now, and so we're on the front edge of a very big wave. Today, we're focused on the boy crisis and the need, the requirement for boys to be properly and formally initiated into manhood. And native cultures throughout the world have understood that a boy's passage into manhood must be marked and celebrated in order for him to shift his consciousness from the playfulness of childhood, when you're told what to do, to the responsibilities of manhood when you contribute to your tribe or society. And Western cultures, unfortunately, have mostly lost that tradition, and boys have suffered from that loss. We have some cheap substitutes for that important initiation into adulthood: the bar mitzvah in Jewish tradition, confirmation in Catholicism, getting a driver's license, going off to college, having sex for the first time, and becoming of legal age to drink or smoke pot. In their book, The Boy Crisis, Doctors Warren Farrell and John Gray point out that boys are in crisis across multiple fronts. In education worldwide, boys are 50% less likely than girls to meet basic proficiency in reading, math, and science, 50% less. And in mental health, ADHD is on the rise. And as boys become young men, their suicide rate goes from equal to girls to 6 times that of young women. Boys who grow up with less involved fathers are more likely to drop out of school, drink, do drugs, become delinquent, and end up in prison. Boys' IQs are going down, and they experience more problems in the area of physical health. So becoming a full-fledged young adult takes much longer today than it did 50 years ago. 30 really is the new 20. The late teens to adult years are now called emerging adulthood. And so tribal societies have had these formal ways of marking that rite of passage. In some tribes, a ceremony might involve men dressed as gods or scary beings showing up at night and demanding that a mother turn over her son to them. And of course, the mother was in on the scheme, but she'd wail and resist and hold her son back, trying to protect him and prevent him from being taken from her. And the men would remove the boy by force, scaring the daylights out of him. And they'd often march him and other boys a long distance, then put the boys through a highly challenging process. In one that I read about, the boy was sat on top of an anthill with biting ants and was told that if he cried out, he would be lost forever and never grow up to be a man. Now, these were severe challenges, and some of which could actually result in death. But it caused the boy to find new resources inside of himself. And once on the other side, joined the world of men and no longer lived in his mother's home. The young men were then given an important responsibility, such as standing guard at the periphery of the village, because many tribes realized that if young men lived inside the village, they could easily burn it down. The great mythologist Michael Meade said, oh, by the way, he's one of our 40 speakers at the upcoming summit in November. He said, if you don't get young men into the right kinds of trouble, they will certainly find their way into the wrong kinds of trouble. So we brought together 4 experts on this topic today, incredible selfless men who have created modern initiatory experiences for the boys in our modern society. And I'm very happy to introduce my guests today. I'll start with Mark Schillinger. He's a physician, a musician, an educator, a community leader, a public speaker, family coach, and a great father. He's passionate about physical health and personal growth and family unity. In the year 2000, he started the nonprofit Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, a wilderness rite of passage initiation for young men ages 13 to 20. More than 2,500 graduates of that program have left that weekend more accountable for their lives, with an understanding of the values and virtues of manhood, and better prepared for the challenges of the adult world. He's also the founder of Challenging Teenage Sons, which helps parents and families develop more caring and cooperative relationships. Parents of boys also need to make adjustments when their sons become young men. Otherwise, the old patterns won't change. And so he educates adults, he educates the parents on how to make changes so that the boy actually experiences becoming a man. I'm proud to say he's also a friend and colleague, and I've been a volunteer during a number of Ultimate Weekends that he runs, and I couldn't recommend it more highly if you have teenage sons. Welcome, Mark, and congratulations on your organization's appearance on the CNN program Life with Lisa Ling. It was quite a beautiful program, and we'll provide a link to the recording at the end of our program. Brad Leslie is the founder of the Young Men's Adventure Weekend in British Columbia, Canada, which was the inspiration for Mark to create the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. Young Men's Adventure Weekend has been running annually since 1990 with more than 1,000 young men graduates. And Brad and his team have inspired numerous other programs, including Kingmakers, a group of men who are committed to mentoring young men into the skills of leadership. He's also a real estate veteran in the Vancouver area, the winner of many awards for his community involvement. And I also happen to know he's an incredible musician and woodcarver and a generous friend for anyone who wants to make a difference in young men's lives. Welcome, Brad. Ipswa Meskakana, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn how to pronounce this properly. Meskakakanis, okay, Ipswa Meskakakanis is a member, chief, and friend to numerous First Nations communities in the Northern Territories above Canada. He's a tireless contributor to the well-being of Indigenous people across an enormous expanse of land. And he's helped with food security issues, health issues, education, transportation, sovereignty, healing ceremonies, counseling, and the initiation of young men into responsible manhood. Welcome, Ipswa. And Michael Boyle is a psychotherapist and leadership consultant. He founded the charity A Band of Brothers in the UK in 2006. The band trains men to act as mentors for young men who have been self-destructive, antisocial, or who have fallen into the criminal justice system. Michael and his co-founders created a powerful initiatory experience based on the myth of Parsifal and the Grail. And it serves as a contemporary rite of passage that enables young men to make a new start in life and claim a better future for themselves. After their initiatory weekend, they offer an entire community of caring support and love and social action, elements that have been missing for those young men growing up. This charity has expanded across the UK, and their track record is amazing. 80% of participants either do not reoffend or they report much lower severity in their offending behavior. And they've showed substantial increases in self-esteem and self-worth and employment and education and housing security, and also reductions in addiction and conflict and violence. Michael's also a certified training leader for the Mankind Project. So welcome, Michael. I'm going to ask each man to make introductory comments about their work with young men, and then we'll move into a Q&A panel format. So, and you're welcome to ask questions in the chat box if you're online with us. We'll give you links to their websites and programs toward the end of our program. So let's go in the order that I introduced you. Mark, please give us your thoughts.
All right, well, first of all, thank you, Ryan, for having me. My thoughts are pretty straightforward. I wanted to be the world's best father. And back in the 90s, when I was having a brutal, difficult time raising my son and my daughter, I realized that I did not want to grow older knowing that I did not give my best efforts to raising my son. I didn't know what was wrong. I thought I was a good dad. I heard about Brad Leslie, of course, who's on the panel, and his rite of passage event. So we went up there. I went as a medical kind of help volunteer, and Gabe went as a participant. And it turned things around for us. It really started to melt all of our years of tension. And since I was a child, I always had a big vision of doing something good in the world. And so I decided, okay, well, I'll start my own rite of passage event too and bring it down here to the West Coast, which I did. At the first event, we had 205 young men. We didn't even have a penny at the time for any advertising. So I realized that I was not the only daddy who was having a hard time raising his son. So at that point, I was really clear that this is something that needed to go on. And we have since now put on 45 or 46 events. I think it's actually 3,500 young men. And I've learned a lot about mentoring young men. And so I would like to say that what really convinced me to continue the work was back in the year 2006, I got a chance to go to Africa and for a very brief period of time spend some time learning about the traditions of the Samburu tribe in Kenya. And it was quite an amazing event. I befriended young men there. Some of them spoke English. I got a chance to speak to the elders, the shaman, the leader of the community. And essentially what I learned was that most parents that I mentor and coach here have the right instincts, like I had the right instincts, but I didn't have the right tools to handle family life that was now being sort of blown up, as I like to say, by the technology bomb. So from that trip, I realized that parents had the right skills, but they were missing the secret ingredient, which was that they didn't have a way, they didn't have a method, they didn't have a system like this tribe had, and like all of the tribes had for tens of thousands of years, probably before we became into this patriarchal dominated society where we actually have dropped them out. So that was an amazing experience to have, and it really gave me the confidence to carry on this work. I'm just going to take a moment to just show you some pictures of my experience there, because it was quite life-changing. And hopefully you can all see this. So what got me bonded with the young men was that I played music. I'm a drummer. And Riane has seen me in action. He's participated in Young Men's Ultimate Weekends. And when you start drumming, young men usually want to get up and dance and let go, take off their masks. So I befriended these young men, started drumming with them, chanting with them. They took me on one of their sort of secret gatherings of young men and adult men. And I got a chance to watch them pray and chant. And then they took me to the leader of this tribe. And here he is giving me a gift. And I got a chance to speak to a lot of the elders, a lot of the families that were there. And this is a mentor in one of the tribes waiting to mentor this young man. And to watch how mentorship and community raised the young men and the young women for that matter was mind-blowing. And so it led me to this kind of conclusion here is that, you know, we all live in the same house in our modern times, but we're all isolated. And the whole purpose of the rite of passage is to prevent this kind of thing happening where families are isolated. So I'll end my slide with this. My conclusion about what families need to do right now is to stop, for parents certainly, is to stop parenting and to start mentoring your son. As Riane said, 30 is the new 20. And if we're going to change that, it's going to really begin with the parents, because we don't have rite of passage in our communities anymore. And so it's on us as the parents to do rite of passage in the house. So in addition to putting on rite of passages for young men, I also put on rite of passages for parents to learn how to let go of their sons as boys and how to receive them after they've been through an initiation so that they can have more caring and cooperative relationships. And at this time in history, and I'll end with this, there's been no probably more important time to have rite of passages and to have mentors than this time if we're going to make this transition out of the old way of masculinity.
Thank you, Mark. And Brad, I'd love to hear from you now.
Hit your space bar, buddy. We can't hear you.
You're muted, Brad.
1, 2. Technology. Good morning and thank you. Couple opening comments. I do not want to talk about what we do in terms of a reaction to societal needs or the disaster of the fad of the month. I want to talk about a timeless thing and have these 3 different transects. One is the path of the angel. So depending on your favorite mythology, before we're born, we're basically, the incarnating spirit is a speck of light, a little angel with all the angelic qualities of healing, loving, creativity, loving, healing, creativity. And then when we're born, we forget and we spend our whole life either totally lost or looking for somewhere to connect. And then society conspires to pull us away from ourselves even more with war as a way of life, continual financial paranoia, lousy nutrition, no sense of elders, etc. All those crimes. And the thing is to find our way back home so that the indwelling divine masculine, there's a key word, kids, divine masculine that we all carry can actually come to the fore and fully express the spirit that we are and be more useful to the planet. The next one I have is the arc of the man. So when a man is born, the first 10 years, I say, is in mom's world, where his needs are taken care of. He's fed, he's clothed, he goes to school, learns how to play soccer, ride a bike. Over 20, or now over 30, you're in man's world. You got to get a job, pay your way, be useful, or get a shopping cart. It's up to you. In the middle, we have these transition years, the teenage years, where something magical is supposed to happen, where he wakes up and goes from mom's world to man's world. Because in mom's world, you have needs and you're needy, and in man's world, you're productive and you're accountable and useful. But there's none of that transition stuff. So the rites of passage that Lion talked about are vital. So the place for initiation is the work that we do. So with any man, there's the warrior, the businessman, the father, and ultimately there's the elder. All these parts of the persona are all stacked in that original teenager, like Russian dolls, nesting dolls. And usually by some form of initiation, a shock, a challenge, the next facet comes to life. And what we seek to do is to bring out the next facet. So for the adolescent to come into man's world, we do these really fun initiations. It's fun for us. It scares the crap out of them. So our event in the wilderness outside of Vancouver, mountains and lakes and things, we give them 3 days of wild challenges to find out who they are. We prefer not to teach and indoctrinate them. We don't want to fill the air with our pontification. I want them to discover who's inside of them. The one societal thing that I will acknowledge, or that I'll put on the table, is this whole loss of man, capital M-A-N, for the last 50, 60 years. You know what I'm talking about. The side effect of that is we do not have the noble warrior, the provider, the protector that's providing for our community. And we do not have the beneficent king. There's lots of bad ones, dictators. We don't have the beneficent king, which shows up as when the king is in the country or the king is in the home, there's a sense of security. And by having the loss of man, yes, it's sad, these poor boys, but it's also functionally and societally disastrous for us not to have noble warriors and beneficent kings bringing peace and security to our community. The warrior never actually starts a fight, but we quite often finish them. Those are my opening thoughts. It's more a timeless thing that we all carry, because we all have a divine spark inside of us, in whatever language you want to put it in. I call them mythologies. And it's fun to try to find a way to get back home and express what you got. I'm good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Brad. Ipswa, we would love to hear from you now. And you are a native man, and we are all sort of imports. So please give us your wisdom.
Tanse, Ipswa, Masmascagnis, Yanaki, Anade, CCs, the Gichimanituya, is the Nemo. I greet you formally and recognize this Nemo territory, the place I have the opportunity to live, learn, and love. I recognize each and every one of you in your territories, your homes, your villages. And especially I'd like to recognize these panel members. And I'd ask you, please, for this part, please turn your cameras on, relatives. I want to see your faces when I'm speaking. And this work can't be done alone. We talk about the village, right? It takes a tribe, it takes a village to raise a child, right? So who are those uncles? Who are those men that are spending time with your children? Have they had the opportunity to do their work? Have they had the opportunity to go through these? I was blessed to come through a life that still had initiation, still had ways of a good life way. I come from our canoe family, Quayana. Quayana is the oneness that comes from belonging, having purpose, having connection, seeing the relatedness of things. So when I talk about passage or rites, what we do in our life, in our communities, is not just a single moment in time. It's many moments from the journey of childhood to the moment we pass into the mystery. But of course, that teenage moment for most is one of the most profound, one of the most significant. And it has to be a moment of celebration. At this point, they should already have been filled up in life. should already be ready to celebrate some of their gifts, their skills, what they bring, what is their vision, what is their medicine, what's their gift, and who's going to be there to celebrate, who's going to be walking along with them in their life, who are their other peers, their mentors, who are their uncles, are they able to look behind them and start to see the young people behind them they're able to mentor. So we do this through our own journeys, and I'm hoping I can do this in a good way here. I'm not as a technology savvy as the rest, and you know, our metaphor is the canoe life, because even though we may live in different places and different spaces, we come together every year as a family, and we come together on the water, and the water and the natural world teaches us a lot about how to be and what to do. We recognize all of the diversity, all the people, all races. We're intergenerational. We have men, women, two-spirited, many-spirited, because without those connections, how can we define who we are? How can we be unique and yet learn to come together as one? It's what it takes to work in the work world. It takes to be a family, it takes to be successful, is being able to pull together. Most of you may have heard a bit about the tribal canoe journeys. We're one of many, many families out there, and ask if you ever hear about them, please support them. We paddle all the way from the top of the Canadian all the way down into Washington State. But it's what happens in between where they get to discover who they are, working together, being mentored, doing it themselves. Spend a lot of time camping. They have to learn how to do all these things on their own. We're not going to tell them how to pack their gear or what to do, but you're going to see a lot of smiles and faces from the aunties, the uncles, a lot of words of encouragement. Spend a lot of time in circle planning. They're going to see how we do things, how they model, and then they're going to take over and do it themselves. And we're going to stand back. We celebrate and we find culture. What's your culture? Where do you come from? This is the biggest challenge. People say we don't have culture. Lion just said that in his introduction, and I don't believe, because I know what Lion does. I know his belief systems. He has culture. He has roots. It's just about discovering how you can express them in your life. How do they show up? What is your family's roots? Or what do you want to co-create? So we're very fortunate we get to go out on the water in this beautiful canoe. We help build it by hand. We build many others. But in it, we learn to find out what it is to be in family and to relation with each other. And especially the young boys, they get the opportunity to really shine, to bring out their gifts, their skills. I didn't pack all this gear, they did. They were waiting for me at 5 a.m. saying, "Hey, Grandpa, it's time to go." I'm like, "What do you mean? Canoe's loaded." That's empowering. And at the end, we come together and we feast, we celebrate, we acknowledge all of those gifts, those skills they brought together. Some of them are practical, some of them are artistic. Doesn't really matter what it is. It's grown so large, we nearly need an entire beach now to land all of the canoes. It's an amazing power from 30 years ago where there were just a few to now many families, many communities, many intergeneration, intercultural. Other nations have joined us. You can see, and you can imagine what it must be like to be welcomed ashore by a crowd like this, to be recognized for a moment, to be honored, to be celebrated, and then at the end, to share and thank our hosts and all that is for the giveaway, the abundance that life offers us, to recognize that we belong here, a generation my age and the next generation being uplifted, literally and metaphorically. For me, we learn how to be in family. We learn what's important to us by being separate from the community, by being out there in the wilderness, by pushing our skills. Here's my great-grandson, the reason I do all this work. So when we think about the passage of rights, when we think about why do we do these things, it's so important to think about who are we leaving this legacy to? What are we initiating them into? And what future are we going to help them envision, imagine? And Lion and so many of these men here do that every day, challenging us to envision a new way. It doesn't have to be the mystical or the fantasized imaginary stuff. It can be the community that's next door to you.
Oh, thank you, Ipswa, for sharing that depth and that community. When I was growing up, there was the synagogue and the school, and neither one was very welcoming.
Oh, sure.
So it's beautiful to see all the people welcomed so beautifully. Michael, you have been working with young men in trouble and challenged. Please share with us your thoughts.
Well, my story begins with myself as a young man who was in trouble or in danger of being in trouble. And I always think myself, I was lucky that I survived. A lot of my friends didn't. And I managed to get away with a lot of stuff. And my culture really that brought up me was I was trying to, do the right thing. And that meant being successful, meant making money. So I started a business and I did okay. I had more money than I needed. But there was never enough. I knew that I was always driven for more activity. I had people working for me. I had stuff going on all over the place. But somehow I wasn't very happy. And but like Mark, I had a son by that time. And I thought, well, is this the hamster wheel I want to introduce to him? This can't be it. There must be more. And from the outside, everyone was telling me how successful I was. But something inside me wasn't working. And someone said to me, you need to see a therapist. And I said, come on, Phil, I'm not going to see a therapist. I don't know. I've seen therapists before. It's never, oh yeah, but I know someone who's really good for you. He'll be great. Yeah, they're all great. Yeah, but this guy's a druid. So I said, okay. So I went along to see this guy. And at the time, my thing was cars. I was always getting cars. And I had this new car at the time. It was a brand new BMW, white leather seats, metallic blue 635. It was like a magic carpet. Anyway, I pulled up outside this guy, found this guy's house. I pulled up outside the house. This is an initiatory moment for me because I never had therapy. Anyway, I went inside. We sat down and started to talk. And he said to me, "What do you keep looking out the window for?" And I said, "I'm just checking my car." He said, "You're okay, it won't get stolen around here." I said, "No, it's okay. I'm just checking because I like looking at it, to be honest with you." I've suddenly knew I've only had it a week. So he got me to pick up my chair and put it right by the window, and my nose is on the window looking at the car. And he said, "You tell me what you're seeing." So I started to talk about the metallic paint and no, what is it really? What are you looking at? So I started to talk about, it's my ego trip. And we went down and down and down and down until we got to the point where this was the consolation prize for me not honoring my soul. And it was a very different ride home in that car after that. That was an initial experience for me. I mean, there are many, as we all know, but that was it. So that then led me to a Robert Bly event. And most of this work, I would say from my point of view, that Robert was really seminal. I mean, he was the one who was brave, funny, fierce, and soulful. I went to one of his gatherings and I thought, shit, this is a dangerous place. There's a lot of dangerous dudes around here, And he was an old man, fairly old man at the time, but funny and fierce. And I loved him talking about the soul and his poetry and initiation. And I started to wake up to this. My God, why didn't I ever have it? And nobody initiated me. I can see how valuable that is now. And then, luckily enough, I joined the men's group in London that were the people who brought him over. That they set up the events. And then the next year, Michael Mead came and James Hillman. And because we were setting up the events, I was driving these guys around, so I had access to them. And it really did set up a desire. I kind of heard the call, as I say. I want to do something for young men. First of all, I've got to do something for this young man. And where do I do that? And I found a guy. I heard that there was a guy in the United States doing initiations, or somebody was. And I got this number of Bill Kauth, and I phoned Bill Kauth. And next thing you know, I'm down in Texas with a lot of other guys doing this initiation that the Mankind Project does. And the next thing you know, with a few other guys and the great help of the great men down in Houston, we started doing this thing in London. Because when I start to think about what to initiate young men, it started to be a huge question. I mean, it opens up a conversation. What do we want to initiate them into? What do we want them to know? What do they need to know? What are the values that we need to put? So these are the difficult conversations. And then, you know, if it takes men to initiate the boys, where do you get the men from? Who are these men? Where are they going to come from? So I had all this, but I thought, well, if I stick around the Mankind Project long enough, there'll be enough men who show up, you know, and that's how it worked really. And I started to study to be a therapist myself, as often happens in those things, and then studied Jung, who's obviously influential in the men's, so influential in men's work. And then from the psychological point of view, there's this really important thing that I don't know how it contributes to the gender neutral conversation, but it goes right back to the point in every child's life when they wake up one day and understand that they're separate from their mother. And that's a profoundly traumatic moment for some of us and most of us. Suddenly, I'm on my own, I'm crying and nobody comes, whatever it is, that, you know, that realization. And but for boys, it's a double whammy, because the girls eventually look into their mother's eyes as they begin to become more in the first year or so. They begin to see the identity and realize the continuity that's there. But that doesn't happen for the boys. They have the separation, and then they have a double whammy because there's no continuity there. So I'm going to have to go outside myself to find that. And when there's an attentive, it was what Robert Moore used to call boy psychology. You know, so manhood has to be achieved, whereas women know who they are, particularly when they get into puberty. They know who they are through their bodies. They're connected to the earth. All of those things. So it's what Jung used to call psychological regression. So this was the moment that our indigenous ancestors, right back through time, right across the world, realized that something needed to be addressed. Because if it wasn't, then like me, I was still out there trying to prove myself. I was going to be having to prove myself my whole life and never prove anything, because it was never going to end. So so my initiation was I was finally seen. I was finally recognized, you know, and it was a very moving event for me. And I realized that's what young men need. They just need to be seen and blessed for who they are, and not criticized for their behavior and all that stuff. So I started to work in a youth prison, and I did a poetry and storytelling session in the youth prison. And I really began to tune into how misfortune just comes across young men, and they finish up having no choice. But there was no choice for some of those young men. They couldn't finish up anywhere else but prison because of their backgrounds. And so it became to build until I worked out how to do an initiation process based upon my experience and my work with the Mankind Project. And I knew that there were certain things that were involved. We had to find something to initiate them into. There had to be a community. We had to get mentors, just ordinary guys. They didn't have to be clever or therapists or anything. They just had to care. And we are blessed. There are so many men out there who instinctively want to help young men. It's wonderful. So that was another concession, and just to find a place where we could do this thing and have this initiatory weekend that they would never, or a retreat that they would never forget, where they went through something, achieved something, and were come through the other side of something. It's almost like the movement was away from mother, away from dependence, into independence, and then after that to the reality of interdependence. But you can't jump from dependence to you have to do the independence bit in the middle. You can't jump from one to the other. And we live, of course, as I know, and many of us, we live in a culture of adolescence. You know, the culture's not interested in anybody growing up or anybody's personal development. You know, it's permanent adolescence really out there. And, you know, I just look at the politicians, and I think that you know, so like all the other men that have spoken, this is timely. And yeah, so I'm sorry going on a bit, but there we are. Thanks, Lion. I'll stop talking now.
Thank you all. All of these comments are so deeply touching for me because we as men were in young manhood. We were in boyhood and then young manhood, and we found our way one way or the other. I found my way into manhood through the help of many other men. I was early in men's groups, and they being with other men, sharing these kinds of issues and stories and what's going on and the difficulties. It's really important that men get together and talk with each other. I'd like to start the panel with a question. You know, when you're working with young men, what are the lessons you want them to walk away with after the process you take them through? And then how do you make sure that they can continue on their path and they don't slip back into old patterns? So, you know, a minute or two each. Let's go in the same order. So, Mark, please start us off.
You're muted.
Thank you for waiting. My private mentoring with young men is the same as rite of passage in terms of what we want them to come away with. Number one, I think Ipswah was saying is like, first of all, to really discover who they are, their own virtues and values, and trust that their authenticity counts. Number two, that they learn that they have to develop certain virtues and values and behaviors to be responsible to their family and their community. Number three, to develop the virtues or use their own innate virtues to develop resiliency, to get over this thing of life is not fair. I just say, welcome to the planet. And now how will we deal with it from there? So resiliency, I find really critical. Number four, spirituality, whether it's here in my office mentoring with my drum and my sage and all that, or whether it's at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, developing a sense of spirituality. What is their relationship to this? Our whole ideal and my ideal when I'm working with young men is to get them to open up to awe. Like it's what our organization, I'm sure everybody else's is, it's non-denominational. We just want them to get a sense of something that's bigger than them and includes them and can never be separate from them. And then finally, I've just noticed in my work just the last couple of years, and this relates to conversations that you and I have had Lion over the years, to really now focus more on relationship with women. Because I do feel that once young men are really happy with who they are or learning to be seen and recognized for who they are, they naturally then have more energy to contribute to their families, and they're way more open to learning how to be with women in a way that's way more respectful and generous and cooperative. So those are the goals that I have when I'm working with young men.
Thank you, Mark. And Brad.
Yeah, what he said, got a checklist of things.
Yeah, but I learned from you, so what you said.
Add to the
Yeah,
list.
it's incestuous. A sideways story. At one of our events, 2005, I think it was, in the middle of the initiation weekend, our adventure weekend, imagine a cartoon where the earth's shaking from an earthquake, the volcano's blowing up, the barn explodes, the German dive bombers, cow flies through the air, lightning, just the frenetic energy of initiation. And I'm sitting there, this is cool, guys. And our shaman is like, I can see him coming down the trail through the forest as if his hair is on fire and apoplectic, like he couldn't speak. What's going on here, man? What's going on here, man? Because the energy was building in this cauldron that we created. And in a moment of calm, I said, you know, whenever we put on initiation for them, men for the young men, we're all in the same cauldron and none of us are immune. We're all going to get something, usually the next rung on our ladder. We're all going to get something, usually the next rung on our ladder. So for me to say what those young men are going to get, not my job, man. We create the container and the mayhem for them to discover things, usually the next rung on their ladder. So yeah, I hope it's all the wonderful things that Mark said, and we do some minor elements, but it's for them to discover their next step. And I've done hundreds of these things, and when I talk to them afterwards, yeah, man, I learned this. Wow, where'd that come from? It's is to set the container and let it be free enough for them to discover whatever is next for them. One high-end West Vancouver young man went home and his mom called a couple of days later and said, how was it? He came and said, Mom, I didn't realize how good we had it. Thank you. We never thanked him. Or other ones, yeah, we cleaned his room up. Who knows? Who knows? The other key one that they get kind of peripherally is knowing that there are good men out there. Michael talked about good men show up. I call them men of good heart. These are the men that show up to help with a barbecue or to paint a fence or help the old lady move. They're just good men of good heart, men who know it's a good thing, probably don't have a whole bunch of metaphysical sophistication and wooji like the rest of us. They're just men of good heart, and they show up. They're the high school teachers, the sports coaches, the cop that doesn't bust them and say, hey man, straighten it out. Our young men know to recognize men of good heart. Yeah, we want to keep them in a little container and keep them safe for the next 5 years. They're out there with the world, they're integrating. So the secret magic button that they get is go find men of good heart. Because they had a weekend with 50 or 60 of us, and they know what they look like, what they smell like. Our t-shirts say YMAW, Young Men's Adventure Weekend. But it also stands for the young men are watching. So even as this council of elders is talking, they're on the bookshelf sitting, watching us. You get on the bus, you go in the coffee shop, they're always watching. And for them to know that there's good men out there is a lifesaver for them. So it might be an uncle, they'll grab an uncle or somebody, and they'll just know to go find them. And that's part of one of the benefits of the initiation. So the initiation is one, whatever the next rung of letters for them. And then two, go find some good men. And they call us, they come back next year, they bring their friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Ipswash, share your thoughts with us.
So, and also adding to all of that, you know what we're trying to do. What are the young men watching for? So, what we try to model is a way of life, right? And it doesn't have to fit into any world or description, right? But what does a good life look like? And so we challenge them from early on until they're ready to walk into manhood, for them to really define what that is. What is going to be of relevance in their life? How are they going to spend their time? What do they want their life's vision to look like at the end? How are they going to bring out their things and still navigate the industrial corporate world that's out there? So we're trying to give them the strength to be able to carry on. And you all know that, where is it that you dig on your hard day? What is it you hang on to on your worst day ever? And we hope that for most of them, they may not have had that. So what we try to give them is as much love, because love is the antidote to all that horrible crap that's out there. Most of you probably already heard this week about the work going on in Kamloops, exhuming the residential schools, the worst atrocity that could ever be done to a child, to be put into that situation. So we're trying to find that antidote, and that's love. They know that those people standing next to them are going to love them no matter what. No matter what, they've got these people they can pick up the phone and call, Michael or Brad or Mark or all of our allies or angels. They know those people have got their back. And in that container, they can find out who they really are and what they really want to make of their life, however they want to spend that time. And I have seen amazing, amazing transformations in those short periods of time, even if it's just a couple of days, whether it's a week, whether it's 3 weeks paddling. When they come to shore and those uncles, those aunties, those relatives hold them up for a moment, they find that purpose, that meaning, that value, the ability to search out the great mystery in whatever way, and they know where to come back if they get lost. And that's the one that we work on, is all those that are lost, that get disconnected, that have nothing when they go home. And so we provide that context, and we give them the context to how to create it in their everyday life, how to create their own community, their own support network, their whatever it is they need. And we're seeing this intergenerationally. The world is shifting, trying to get away from that. The lovely lady posted there, she didn't have a mom to come home to sometimes. And that's That's the destructiveness of part of the society and culture we have. That's the impact of industrial culture. You know, we're seeing the end of that, and we're overturning that. That's why I think this conversation in Humanity Rising is so key, because it's not just the young people, it's the generations that need to find these ways. Ho ho.
Thank you, Ipswa. And I just want to mention that the horrors uncovered at Kamloops, the bodies of children. Ipswa was at Kamloops as a child, and he went through a number of these kinds of schools where they took Native children and tried to civilize them. It's a horrible word to even think of, but
Uninitiating them,
yes,
carrying them out for their roots.
yeah,
They had a
thank
beautiful
you.
system.
Yeah. So thank you, Ipswa, for that deep wisdom. Michael, tell us about the lessons that you want to.
It's possible to initiate a young man in a very negative way, you know. And I think a lot of
Gangs.
the gangs and the prisons particularly are that, you know, it's a place of negative initiation. Of course, a lot of what we provide, as all the men have said, you know, it's not what's said, it's just the example of a lot of the youngsters that come to us have not had great role models of men in their lives, and masculinity is equated with punitive authority. They don't trust men. And just the being around the good men that Brad talked about, the men of heart, the example of how we treat nature, you know, that there's this element I loved to get before, that you leave the mother and eventually you find the big mother, you know, you find yourself in the mother. And so that the example and the sense of belonging, you know, we say, we don't say, they know there's a fire burning here and they might go away after the weekend, but the fire's going to be here for you when you're ready. And we've had many examples of that, where these kids just disappear, and then suddenly the fire's burning, and then there he is. And for a guy from a couple of years back who just wanted to see whether we're still here. So there's other things that are said, you know, like could be, you know, we give them the power of choice. We encourage them not to be victims, and that mistakes are learning opportunities, all that kind of stuff. But it's the not said stuff that I think that, as others have said, that's really powerful. Yeah.
There's your fire, Michael.
Oh yeah, nice. You can feel the warmth from here, thousands of miles away.
That's Saturday night at one of our weekends, like
Yeah.
after all the mayhem, and I'll tell you what we did to get to that. But to get to that point, this is timeless, it's primordial, it's mythological. When we're out there in the wilderness on the lake, the moon comes up screaming and yelling, and then we get to just bask in the timelessness of what we're doing here.
Thank you. So another question that's relevant to our original topic, and that is, how did you learn to see and treat girls and women as a young man? How did you learn how relationships were supposed to go? And when did you learn that there were better or more mature ways to interact with women? And how do you train your young men to shift their view of women and girls and how to relate to them? Let's just go back in the same order. Mark, you go first.
Well, just what popped into my headline was this. When I was growing up in Queens in the 50s and 60s, the men had a card game they do every Friday night. And I lived in this little kind of ghetto, Jewish ghetto. And so every Friday night there'd be probably after lighting the candles, Sabbath, but it was like time to play cards. And so I got to be, when it came to my apartment, my father's apartment, I got to be the guy who would light their cigars and pour their drinks. I had no idea these men drank and smoked. And they would talk about all their wins and all their pains and losses, and they would complain about their wives. And like they would say things that I was like, what? And these were like long married men, loving dudes, great dads, all that stuff. Well, on Wednesday nights, the women would play mahjong. And when they came to my apartment, or my mom's apartment, my sister didn't want to do the job, so I would do it. And I would light their cigarettes and pour their drinks. I was like, I can't believe these women drink and smoke. I didn't know. And I would hear them talk smack about their husbands. And again, they had great marriages. So for me, my earliest impression was like, oh, men and women are equal. They're different and they're equal. And they complain the same. So I thought we were all the same. I was surrounded by a community of mentors. We could not go do very much evil where I grew up because all the men and women watched out for each other. So that's another first impression, that men and women are equally responsible for taking care of us. Another quick story comes to mind. I was never really a rowdy guy. I was not that guy. I was more the philosopher person. But I remember my first time I was going to go spray some whipped cream on a car. It was Halloween. And I was like, I'm a stud. I'm 9. I'm going to go get this. I'm going to kill it. And I get ready to jump out of the bushes. And all of a sudden I hear this voice. It was from one of my mom's girlfriends. And she said, Mark, is that you? Does your mother know you're here right now? And of course I ran as far away as I could. So again, my introduction to men and women was that they're all equally responsible. They all have equal jobs. Everybody worked. So that was my sense. Plus I had an older sister. And to this day, in fact, today she's coming from the East Coast to visit with me. She's always been my older sister. She always taken care of me. So for me, my overall impression was there's no battle of the sexes. They're both equally needed and equally important. And yes, I've had my own personal journey through my relationships with women where I've had to learn to be more respectful, certainly calmer, more accepting. And I feel like at this point in my life, turned 68 the other day, I feel blessed to say that I have great relationships with women. And it all was based on that early impression of that we are all equal, we're all equally loving, we all have the same desires and goals and wants in life. So for me, there's no battle of the sexes. And my job, certainly with young men, is to get them to see that we're all creatures of creation here, and we are all equal, and we have to be equally respectful, equally cooperative, and certainly equally generous.
Thank you, Mark. Brad, I'd like to hear from you, and also just add to this question, what is the impact of easy access to pornography had on the young men today?
How many hours have we got for this one? My history is very strong mom, 2 sisters, 2 brothers and a dad. There's 7 of us in the family. The key one is Leeds Grammar School for Boys, north of England. Hey, Michael, we're neighbors. Immediately followed by sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I was playing in bands. I was at all the big concerts in Leeds. I saw all the bands and the hippie days and the mods. And oh my God, we had fun. But that was another millennium on another continent, like a past life. Then when I was married, my wife was a midwife. And I'm a trained prenatal instructor. And I attended 22 home births with her. I delivered my daughter. And I held my daughter while she delivered her first son. And has attended my daughter's other 2 births. So seeing women as people makers, human makers, and to coach men on how to contend with and support women in childbirth, whoa, that spun my head. Fast forward to the Young Men's Weekend. I do this bit, I'll just take a minute, I'll just take this chunk out of our weekend. In a sweat lodge, often led by Ipswa here, because he's been with us for a few years now. We'll probably never get rid of him. He's a wonderful man. Leads the lodge. And I do this one bit. Gentlemen, can I say something? I want to talk about women. And yeah, I'd like to teach you everything you need to know about women, but I don't have 27 years to tell you all about women. But I do know that in man's world, if you want something, you go get it. I want that truck. I'll save the money. I'll go get it. Michael over here, I want a blue Mercedes, a blue BMW. Let's go get the car. I want the job. I'm going to go for holidays. You just nail it. You nail it. In women's world, it's a little different. For the sake of this story, women is she who waits. The little girl wakes up. We talked about she sees her mom and she knows where she's going to go. She knows her destiny. And she waits till the time when she starts bleeding, menstruating. Oh, I'm a woman now. And then she waits until she finds the right man. A lot of other stuff. And then when she finds the man, she waits until it feels right, till she's built the nest. And then she gets pregnant, and then she waits until the baby's born. And then she waits while she raises him until it's time to let him go. So women is she who waits. They live on a totally different planet to us, but she who waits. And all we can do is first respect, serve, and then maybe love them. So love it, you got to earn your loving thing, but it's real easy to respect because they're the ones that give life to us. I know I've caught babies. I held my daughter while she pushed a baby out. So at the weekend, I just one little bit is She Who Waits. And the guys come out of there and, oh, and I hear from moms, he's looking at me different. Mom is not the enemy. Your enemy is between your ears. So she's telling you what to do. Don't beat the crap out of her. No, don't scream at her. Don't fuck you. It's She Who Waits. She's doing a different job. She has different perspective on things. So we don't teach them anything, but it's just a little consideration.
Thank you, Brad. And Brad, would you remute?
Yep.
Thank you. Ipswa, it feels like your village is men and women and boys and girls and two spirits, and so what are the lessons you want the young men especially to understand about women and girls?
So, in our community, the recognition of the sacred feminine is fundamental. I don't have the authority or the privilege to speak if it weren't that the women said it was so. Here's where I learned. Here's my matriarch. Remember, I had a deep lesson.
Ishwa, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, my back.
You're back.
Thanks. Sorry, something happened in my Zoom here. Hopefully we can see this now. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's my matriarch. Sure, there's many lessons she passed on, but the first one I ever remember is, what we do onto the earth, we're doing to women. So it's really easy to see where we are in the world and society. Ask that question about pornography. How is that not different from the strip mining that we do to the earth? How is that not how we erode or disrespect what's underneath us that provides us abundance? So, when we do work with the men, there is the men's house, there is the women's house, there's the stuff we do together in initiation. I watch these generations, I see Dan posting, and that's the sad part is that, we're now having women have to come to us for initiation, have to come into our houses because there aren't enough of them out there, like my grandmother doing that work. They're so beaten down. So many of our women, sisters missing, lost, not just in indigenous culture, in the world. If there was something that disturbed me deeper, it's about what happens to our women. It's probably one of the reasons I'm called to do the men's work, not just for the boys to men, but for the adult men. Because if our women aren't healed, where's our home center? Where's our place of connection? Where's that center? Even in the earth, where's that connection? It saddens me, when I think and I look at the internet world, because on one hand, like Michael said, if we don't create something for them, they're going to go find their gangs. They're going to wind up in these prisons. Well, now we have these prisons of the digital world that so distort reality. Right? They're so disassociative. So what are those 4 great things we teach those young guys? What are the 4 poisons of life? Ignorance, fear, right? Craving. And then, of course, the golden joy, which is the overconsumption of joy itself, right? Expecting that every moment should be filled with instant pleasure. These are the toxicities. So we try to teach those to purify where we're in ceremony, where we're doing these work. But especially the poisons that have been poured into their mind institutionally from child to teenagehood, when I can get my grips into them if I'm lucky, which is, this notion of the what they expect from women, what they expect from their mothers, this commodification of it, and vice versa, because we as men have been commodified, right? We've been taught and trained to trade away our health and our vitality for money. right? To then hopefully buy love and then eventually buy back our health and eventually kick the bucket, lonely, sad, and bored, or disconnected from our kids, our family, and everything we thought we were building. I mean, that's the delusion. So we try to peel the delusion off as quickly and as painfully and sometimes less painfully as possible. And that's the hypocrisy. That's why we have a hard time getting some of these young men into these weekends, because they see the hypocrisy of it. And they look at it and they look at the footsteps I've left and the generation of men behind us left and said they don't want that crap. And yet somehow they have to find between those two worlds. And so that's what we try to teach them, is find a way between those two worlds to create something that works for them, that's workable. Can it be true on a good day? And, be in right relation. Learn to be in right relation with the land, be in right relationship with women. If you can do those two things, then you can maybe find right relation with yourself. And I know it's paradoxical to Brad's work, and yet we do the same thing, right? It can be inward, but it also has to be externally. So it's a balance of all those. And I'm saddened, to know that, the state of women's work is just as much struggling out there. And I'm complete for now.
Thank you, Ipswa. And Diane wrote, actually, to be honest, women, young girls, are as lost as men, young boys. Young people, it seems, don't know who they are these days. So thank you, Diane, for that comment. And we are watching the comments. If you have specific questions for this panel, please write them in the chat box. Michael, we're around to you. So young men, young women, girls, boys.
Yeah.
What are the lessons that you're trying to teach?
This is an aspect of the men thing that has changed most in my life. I was brought up, I didn't have any sisters. I went to a boys' schools, so girls were a kind of a very attractive, kind of terrifying mystery to me. I couldn't really get it at all. And then when I was old enough to have sexual relations, I realized that I was trying to make that happen to feed my self-esteem. My low self-esteem would be alleviated by, some sort of sexual conquest or something like that. But I had grandmothers and great aunts who taught me respect for the women, but it was very compartmentalized. My father went to work hard and my mother stayed at home and looked after the children. So that's what I was indoctrinated with. So it took me a while to break that, and I had a lot to learn. I look back I'm ashamed at some of the ways that the attitudes I had and that were inherited that I just took on. But nowadays, with this whole porn thing, it's a different world. How women are objectified and how the culture feeds off that, and sells it. And of course, there's no soul in porn. It's just the absence of soul. So it is a conversation that I've been shocked to have in the work with the young men, particularly some, a young man of 13, 14 years old saying, what am I going to do? I'm addicted to pornography. I was shocked the first time I heard that sort of thing. But it is very real now, and particularly with as Ipswa talks about, this prison of the online stuff and the separation from community. So yeah, and then now there's no further development with the kind of gender fusion stuff, which is it seems out of proportion to me, and I don't feel comfortable enough to talk about it, but I don't feel very trusting of it either. So that's me. And one of the things that I hope we do with our young men is they get a little bit more emotionally aware. And a lot of them have reported that they're having better conversations and connections with their wives and their girlfriends, and they're being a little bit more responsible for their daughters and those things. And so, yeah, a bit more in touch with the masculine, and therefore being able to, appreciate the difference, I think. Yeah, thank you. I've spoken.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Brad's saying something there. He's muted.
Brad, did you want to come back in?
I had something to say too.
Yeah, technology. To tag on something Michael said, remind me of a key thing that for us is through our event, they're hiking through the forest. What's going on here? There's wonderment, there's fear. they're on teams with men, and as stuff comes up, they get to, hey, I'm feeling scared about this. I'm worried about this. Are you okay, man? And given this 48 hours, they actually learn a bunch of the key words and see other men doing it. So they actually have a greater degree of enunciating the inner terrain. So a secret little byproduct for our events is enunciating the inner terrain, their emotional states for themselves with other men. We do a fun little thing on the Saturday night. We'll get to it later, where all the pain and grief and the dark stuff comes to the light, and they can put words on it, and they can have better descriptors for their inner states. And as they come to terms with that, then it mutes the charge. They don't throw it out there so much. They're more content with themselves. So they're kind of like less trouble, or that part of their challenges gets removed by enunciating the inner terrain. Thank you.
Ryan, if I could, just one more quick thing, if I could, thank you, real quick. I'm just going to show a picture here because, as you said so graciously and thankfully, we had Lisa Ling come to this all-male event.
Yeah.
And before the event, we have a training with the men. And when we announced that Lisa Ling was going to be there, about 25% of the men stood up and said, "We're not coming. We're not doing this. We don't want to have a woman at an all-male event." And I heard their concerns, and they were good concerns. They just felt that the young men or the adult men would not feel safe to go through the rituals that they were going to go through and the challenges. And we appealed to them to stay and to trust that it would all work out. If the men and the young men really got what they needed at the rite of passage, then they would naturally be courteous, with Lisa. So long story short, at the event, there was never any involvement in any negative way with the young men or the men. Everybody felt safe. She was an angel. She knew how to create a container. I always like to tell the men we were outnumbered. There was 210 dudes and one woman. We were outnumbered. She was a master at making us all feel safe. Nobody felt inhibited in any way. And she told me soon after the event that she cried many times throughout the event. And I think it's because she saw how men and young men are united in their desires to be heroes for everybody, including the women. And she really got that. She didn't see anything that was negative towards women. It was all about the men and the young men becoming the men they always wanted to be. And then she saw the fallout from that, which is that, of course, we're naturally going to want to take care of everybody, including the women. So I'm really proud of the men and the young men. They did their naturally great job with Lisa there.
Thank you. I've put a list of resources in the chat box, including the link to that wonderful program that Lisa Ling did about lost boys and your program. So thank you.
Thank you
for that. There's a number of questions in the chat box, but I think I just want to, in our remaining time, I just want to open it up for final thoughts. And there will be a group meeting on another Zoom site after this, if you want to come and talk to those of us who can stay and answer questions. But just give us your final thoughts. Any of you just speak up. We're wrapping up this very deep topic. I've been really touched by the depth that we're reaching here. There's a lot going on socially, culturally, within the masculine, the feminine, the industrial age, the lack of good parenting, the lack of good models of excellence. So we men, the men gathered here, have all been graced by the women in our lives and the men in our lives who have helped to mature us. I need men in my life. I need women in my life who can help remind me who I am and how to show up. So each of you, one at a time, just give us your thoughts about what can the people watching this program do for their children, for their parents, for their relatives, to help heal this deep rift in the lives of boys, in particular the lives of girls, the lives of human beings. We face a lot of challenges. So give us your final thoughts.
Well, I'll go first. I've always envisioned that every year at the same time of year, all around the world, there'd be a rite of passage season for young men and young women. And certainly in my work, I believe the parents need a rite of passage in this culture as well, so that everybody would be going through this at the same time. And then the young men, the young women, and their parents would all be reunited in some beautiful ceremony. We like to call it the Eyes of Respect at our event, when we reunite the parents with the young men, so that there's a new beginning. Because it is my belief as a social philosopher that there's no way the world is going to get better politically or economically as long as we have this patriarchal society that we have now, which is really based on, you know, hatred and greed and domination, as kind of you were hinting at before, Lion. To me, when the young men and the young women are getting the support they need through rite of passage and mentorship, and I do believe it should be a mentor for every family, that we will have a world when young men and young women know how to cooperate and be more generous, be more respectful, that is the only way the world is going to get better. So my message to parents is have all of your children initiated, and if you don't know where to send them, then do it yourself. And I love to teach parents how to do rite of passage in their own home, because there needs to be, as you said, Lion, in the beginning, there needs to be a line of demarcation that says that we all need to move into the next phase of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Who's next? Unmute
Yeah.
yourself.
Am I live?
You are.
Again, how many hours have I got on this one? For the average teenager, let's see. There's either absent dad, or dad knows what he's doing, or no dad. So there's no key role model in the house. Teachers and cops are saying no, no, no. There's more women teachers than men teachers. They have Homer Simpson and Donald Trump as role models because those are the prominent things. There's this whole loss of man thing going on and on and on. Lion's opening comments and quoting from the Boy Crisis book from our friend Warren Farrell. So the average teenager does not have a good picture of what an adult man is, which is a real shame because in 10 years he's going to be one. And my sole premise is we have this divine masculine, our divine spark. It's not getting religious and woojie-woojie. It's a massively powerful thing. Think of a Greek god as God with the spear and like, what's that Troy movie? Anyway, like the golden warriors out of the Greek legends. We all have that inside of us, and he's totally missing in action. We see like 1% of it, or the distorted version of it. By finding connections with good-hearted men, there are those of us that carry the gift or the curse of this stuff, like the men on this panel and a bunch of other ones, that just kind of know it's in our bones. We've done it before, past lives. I have a council of angels here that keep me on track. And there's all the good-hearted earthmen that know it's right. They know what's right. You know, they'll take a teenager aside and they'll talk to them. Finding those men is vital. It's all a matter of just coming home. I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, would you like to go?
Yeah, if I go in, very briefly, really, I just think, you know, the world's full of psychologists, but we need more psychology applied to the right areas, and rites of passage is something that the agenda of rites of passage needs to be promoted more. I guess we're all doing it anyway, yeah, what it means to be a good man is not really it's not really something that's talked about much. For the families, I guess, to include where the youngsters don't have access to their father, to bring in the uncles and the neighbors and those people to have, you know, good guys around, just to encourage that connection between. So you're encouraging the young man. You can't be his mother and his father. You know, it's impossible. I see so many women trying to do that. It's really tough, impossible. Bring in the men you know, the good men you know in your neighborhood, and just have that first-hand example around for your youngster would be my thing. Yeah. Over to you, Ipswar.
I'm going to tag on to Mark with a slight disagreement. And you can accept this interpretation or not. But the reality is we've all just gone through a passage of rights. We've all just actually gone through a huge global purification process. We're still in it. COVID has given us an opportunity to pause in our lives, an opportunity to examine what's really important, what's working, what's not working, from our personal, the micro to the macro. So it's an invitation, I hope, for many to wake up and make changes in their lives, in their communities, and how they're going about their lives. Right. And there's no single more great investment in my mind than the generation coming behind us. In my culture, that's our old age security pension. I'm getting to the point now where it's great that the young people bring me food because I'm so busy doing this. I don't make my own, and I'm not really able to go out hunting anymore. I've got pretty poor vision, but I think I made a pretty wise investment in my life. Not in the accolades, not in, none of these people here get accolades, but in knowing that if I really want to change the world, I got to start in my own backyard, and I got to inspire the generation coming behind me to throw out what doesn't work and create what does. And that's the only way the tribe has ever survived, is creating those families of intention, creating those communities of intention, and finding ways to work with the natural world that actually work. And as far as the initiation, we're still being initiated. We often say we're always the elders to the ones behind us, but we're also the children to the generations following. And we know that because we're always standing on the shoulders of the great ones. And the next great idea is just behind us, right? It's the next generation that are creating the new innovations. It's the next generation that are bringing out possibilities that we haven't dreamed of. So my invitation is dream big. Inspire that generation of young people to dream and really be able to feel empowered to go out there and know they've got the support to do it in a good way. That's the security of community. That's the security of village and tribe. And we can co-create them. We do it in our neighborhoods, our cul-de-sacs. It doesn't have to be like you see in the fancy movies. It just starts with a couple of good men or good women, some good aunties or uncles that are willing to take a weekend off and do something different. It really is that easy. Thank you all for listening. I love you. And thank you especially to Lion and for this community opening the space today. I wish you well. Oh.
Thank you, Ipswa. Thank you, all of the men here and all the men and women listening to us. Great resources being put in the chat box. Thank you for those. I want to close by talking about, first, Buckminster Fuller, one of my heroes, said, think globally, act locally. And I think that's what we're being directed to here is, you know, we need to understand the larger forces that are impacting us. And yet we also need to act locally with our family and with our community and with our neighbors. That's where it starts. And to be able to reach out to other people that are that need us and to volunteer in whatever way we can to be with these younger people that need guidance so much. And we as elders need guidance too. So that's why we gather here. That's why Jim has brought us together day after day with great wisdom. I always referred back to the virtues, to Aristotle's view that the virtues are qualities that create happiness in ourselves, in others, in our families, and in our communities. So whether it's kindness or love or wisdom or discernment, you know, these are the classic virtues that all religions have tried to teach and that all good people have tried to teach. That's what we need more of, and they require practice. So practice whatever your virtues are, practice those in your life and bring those virtues to your children and to the children around you. So with that, I'm going to hand things back over to Jim. Deep appreciation to all of you who are listening and watching. Deep appreciation to my fellow panelists. What you do for society and for the world is beyond measure. So deep gratitude. We do need to reweave this world, and what you're doing is part of that reweaving. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I also love all of you. And Jim, I'm going to pass the hat back to you.
Thank you, Lion. Thank you, Mark, Michael, Brad, Ipswa. This has been a splendid session and so urgently necessary to contemplate our young. I just heard just yesterday, in fact, there's some data coming out of the state of Colorado that suicides among teenagers in the state of Colorado have gone up 90% in the past year during the pandemic. As kids who are at that point in their lives, they want to run around with all their peers. They've been in lockdown and can't interact at the level and with the energy and happiness that they need so desperately at that time of life, and not really understanding the pandemic, not being old enough to truly understand. They've been in the grip of all kinds of pressures, and colleagues in Asia are saying that suicides among teenagers in China, South Korea, Japan are on the steep rise. So this issue of from boy to man, from girl to woman, could not be more critical. In part because this next generation is really ground zero. They're reaping the whirlwind of everything that we've left undone, at the center of which is runaway climate change. And they are in some ways the most potentiated and least prepared of any generation, because they haven't been nurtured in the initiatory processes with the values and virtues that we all know to be true and that you have spoken of. So Lion, I just deeply honored and grateful that you brought such caliber of men together to contemplate this fundamental issue. When you add the layers in the United States of mass violence and mass shootings, most of which, almost all of which, are done by young men, you have a sense of the gravity of the challenges before all of us. And so thank you for this. Next time, by the way, we're going to have a panel of women because we want to hear what women think men should be and how women would counsel us as men as we reimagine our masculinity beyond patriarchy. So we're going to continue to massage these issues month over month until November. And then we're hopeful that we can gather everyone together for a multi-day discussion of these fundamental issues having to do with the very nature, identity, and purpose of what it means to be human at this critical moment in history. On Monday, we're going to turn to the issue of permaculture and eco-villages. And we're going to have a number of people from different eco-villages and permaculture centers from North America who've been in the domain for decades to share what they've learned and how we can, even with a small little garden plot, produce food and natural abundance that will both nurture us and give us joy as we interact with the Great Mother. So that'll be Monday on Humanity Rising. So thank you, everyone. We'll now close this session, and those of you who can make it, you're welcome to our after session chat. The link has been in the chat box. But again, Lion, Mark, Michael, Brad, Ipswa, brilliant session, very heartwarming. And I salute all of you for the wisdom that you've brought for us today.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. See you on
Yeah.
Monday.
Blessings.
So we're going to hang out here? Is that the answer?